Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. My name is Plami, and in this episode of Plami Plays Through, I'm gonna be sharing my thoughts on the sequel to the last movie that I reviewed, Quarantine 2 Terminal. Now, if you didn't watch my review of Quarantine, or should I say my thoughts on video on Quarantine, basically Quarantine, it's a remake of an originally Spanish movie, I believe it is. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's Spanish. I don't know if it's set in Spain, but I think it's Spanish. I'm convinced it's Spanish. Yeah, it's Spanish. That basically follows a reporter who's doing a documentary on a fire department or something, and they get called to a building where there's a violent person or something. I still don't understand why a fire department gets called in, but whatever. And slowly it turns out that there is an outbreak of zombies, and depending on which movie you watch, and spoilers for both Wreck, the original, and Quarantine, if you don't want to be spoiled. I mean, I don't know why you would be watching this video if you don't want to be spoiled, but just skip about a minute or so. But in the original Wreck movie, it's how to say it, a viral demon disease or something, like a viral demon possession. It's basically zombies, but that's what they are, demons who possess the people, I guess. I don't know, at least that's how I understood it. While in Quarantine, it's a much more realistic take, where it's just evolved, or just I guess, yeah, evolved would be a good word, evolved form of rabies, although it's not really evolved, it's more better engineered, because at the end of the first movie, Quarantine, we find out that some kind of doomsday code person has created it. So there's that, I guess. And basically this movie, Quarantine 2 Terminal, follows it up with following that person who created that viral form of rabies or whatever, and him trying to leave the country by a plane, and a bunch of people get infected. And honestly, I don't even really care too much to tell you what happens in the movie, because it's just not really an enjoyable one. Like the first one, because of the setting, was claustrophobic. Like it was a building with like 4 or 5 floors or whatever, and an attic and basement and whatever, and it felt claustrophobic whenever they had to go through the bunch of zombies, because they, especially when shit started to go down, they were everywhere, so it was terrifying. For this one, I mean, they kind of tried to do the same thing, but it's just the setting doesn't really work as well, because the setting is in a airport hangar or something like that. I don't know if that's what it's called necessarily, but it's basically in that, and it's just not really as close to home as an apartment building, I feel like. That's something that might have made the first movie better, because it was in kind of a relatable place. While in airport hangar, it just doesn't do anything for me. And similarly to the first movie, the characters are pretty much nothing to really write home about. They're not interesting or anything. I guess maybe the kid character, he's kind of interesting because he's actually surprisingly brave and smart. I feel like he might be the most competent person in this movie, but yeah, it's just nothing really to write home about. Although I find it really interesting that the main character of this movie, whose name I have no idea what it is, Jenny, I think she's called, is played by Mercedes Mason, who about 4 years later ends up into one of the Walking Dead spin-offs, Fear the Walking Dead, which I really like. So for me, I first saw that actress in Fear the Walking Dead, so I was kind of surprised to see her in this movie. And it's kind of funny how she already had dealt with zombies before getting into Fear the Walking Dead. I just find that fact kind of funny. I don't know. Also, I can't believe that she's Swedish. She doesn't look Swedish at all. So yeah, I mean, like, there's not much to say about this movie. It's basically an explanation, and maybe just shows you who the person who created that rabies virus from the first movie is, but the character isn't really that much interesting, and I don't really feel like it needed an explanation. The setting is not great. Like, there's not much to this movie that adds to Quarantine 1. And like, Quarantine 1, I honestly find it very much rewatchable multiple times. I've watched it ever since I first watched it. I've watched it about 5 or 6 times, and honestly, I could literally just put it on and play it and watch it right now, and I would enjoy it just as much as on first rewatch. For Quarantine 2, I just don't really give a shit. Like, there's not much to it that is entertaining. It's not even that scary. There might be a couple of moments which are scary, but largely the atmosphere just doesn't work as well. I feel like it might have worked better if it was contained to the plane, maybe in the sky, and maybe they eventually land down, and maybe they could have shown the zombie apocalypse happening or whatever at that point. That could have been actually a pretty cool concept. But even just them staying in the plane could have been cool. But the second they leave the plane and go to the hangar, there are a couple of moments where I feel like the atmosphere of it works, but for the most part it really doesn't. And in this case, I am completely in agreement that the original movie's sequel is much better. Like, Rec 2 is much better, with much more interesting concept. While this one could have been pretty interesting, but it just really wasn't. I still think it might be worth a watch if you want to learn a little bit more, but for the most part, it's not really that worth a watch. Like, you're better off just watching a recap or a review or whatever than watching this movie. It's just not really worth it. And yeah, I just don't really have much to say about it. The things that stood out to me the most is the actress who plays the main character. And if I'm gonna be honest, that's the only thing that I enjoyed about this movie. Seeing that actress in a main role, or should I say more of a... I mean, she isn't the main character, but like, seeing her in a lead role, it was pretty cool, because in Fear the Walking Dead, she's more of a supporting character than anything. But I still enjoyed her in that series. So yeah, I just don't really have much to say about this one. And in terms of rating, I would say it's 5.7 out of 10. It's pretty bad. It's average level of trash horror movie. Like, you could watch it without really thinking too much about it, but it's not really gonna be a worthy experience. I don't know. Like, it's competently made, but it's just not really that engaging. And if people think Quarantine is bad, like, I really wonder what people think about this one, because this one is kind of bad. Like, at the very least, there's nothing into it that is anywhere near how good the first movie is, or feels as scary as the first movie. The only thing, as I said, is just some moments whenever they are in the plane are terrifying, especially when they go back at one point to the plane and everything is dark. I think that is a really scary scene, but for the most part it just doesn't work. And I think the main part about it, about why it doesn't work, is the setting. I think they should have picked a different setting. Although I do like the fact that this movie was basically happening at the same time, or very early after the first movie, timeline wise, because there, at one moment we see somebody watching an online news or something, and it shows a reporter that we saw in the first movie. Like, they show a video news of what is happening at that motel from the first movie, and I'm pretty sure this might even be the exact same news report that we see in the first movie at one point. So yeah, that's kind of a pretty cool thing, and I think that's kind of taken in a certain way from Rec 2. Like, that might be the only thing that they've copied in a certain way, but they still change it quite a lot. Because the one thing I know about Rec 2, and this might be Rec 3 as well, because I don't really... I haven't really watched those movies, so I cannot really remember which events happened in which movie. But in one of those Rec sequels, There's a part of the movie where we see some events from the first movie from a different perspective, like other people with a handheld camera are shooting stuff, and that's kind of, I guess, similar to seeing the same news report from from the first movie from a different perspective, I guess. And yeah, I also should mention that this movie didn't use found footage, which, I mean, I wouldn't say that having found footage for this movie would have definitely made it amazing or a masterpiece, but it didn't really help it. Although there was a bunch of cool scenes where they used uh, night vision glasses. I almost forgot what that was called. So there was a couple of cool moments with that, but largely it's just not really worth it. There's not enough quality or interesting content to it to make it stand out and be enjoyable. It's not terrible, it's perfectly watchable, but yeah, it definitely could have been so much better. So yeah, those were my thoughts on Quarantine 2 Terminal. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe. Also, check out the link in the description to my Twitter if you don't follow me there, and to my Wattpad where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos on my channel, I'm also a writer. And if you end up enjoying my stories over on Wattpad, or you simply enjoy my videos here on YouTube, you can head over to Patreon where you can pledge your support and help keep the channel going and help support me so I can keep writing the stories you enjoy. But if you don't want to do it, that's completely fine. You can still help me out by liking this video, subscribing, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And I think that's pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!